Órale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. I'm your host, Jorge Martin, and Familia, we are on YouTube. Please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. We're growing. This NFL Insider series is winding down, but I tell you, it is still, people are going back and watching the library. It is just fantastic, And, we got another great guest coming up right now, and I'm just so excited. But first off, I just want to tell you another thing I'm excited about, the fantasypoints.com. Go to fantasypoints.com. You get some of the great fantasy minds: John Hanson, Graham Barfield, Joe Dolan. You got Scott Barrett, Tom Brawley, and Wes Huber. I'm telling you, you get some of the greatest fantasy minds. They're going to help you win your league. And when you go to fantasypoints.com, put in the promo code Familia22. You can do Familia 22 if you want to do it in Spanish. You get 10% off, Familia. And let's get into our invitado, Familia. I tell you, this is when I tell you that the return guests have been coming back. This has been fantastic. This was an honor to have this man on our show. He is incredibly busy. We actually are catching him right before training camp starts today. So this is great. Zak Keefer, he covers the Colts for The Athletic, and he also does work on Wish TV. He's just, I tell you, literally he's at the training facility right now. So he's going to be, make sure you're checking him out on Twitter when you're right there. When check him out on Twitter, so you get those updates straight from the field. Zak, mi amigo, welcome, bienvenido. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun last year, and if you hear any whistles or coaches yelling in the background, then you know that practice is getting going. So, yeah, Colts are rolling here in Westfield.
Oh man, I tell you, and speaking of rolling, you rolled something phenomenal out with, the Andrew Luck story. It was, before we get into the present day, that look back at such an incredible time. You lived it. It was lived it the last years, lived his retirement. The people you interviewed, the never before told stories that you shared. That moment with David Shaw. If anybody hasn't, you got to listen to it. But it was all special. How did this whole project come together? And kind of like, what were some of the great revelations to you?
Yeah, The Athletic came to me and asked me if I wanted to do a narrative podcast on Andrew Luck's career, and I said no, because, like you just mentioned, I lived it, right? I wasn't necessarily dying to go back into the shoulder surgery, and the night he retired was the craziest night of my career. And, the Colts have moved on, and a lot of people have moved on. But at the other token, I feel like he's one of the most fascinating stories in NFL history, the last 20 years for sure. And not just his personality, but his story as well. And when you put them together, I think that's kind of what you get with the podcast. There's a lot more to his story than just the night he walked away. And I've thought back to that night a lot the last couple of years, and I've asked myself, like, how did that all happen? Like, I know why he retired, but how did we get there? How did we get to the point where this guy at 29 couldn't even handle football anymore? And I wanted to go back and talk to the people around him. And I thought I knew the Andrew Luck story, but I didn't. I really didn't. From talking to people like Jacoby Brissett and David Shaw and Tavita Pritchard and on. They really peeled back the curtain in a way that I'd never heard before. And so that's what we tried to do with this story, is tell the Andrew Luck story that a lot of people thought they knew, but in reality, they didn't. Because if I didn't know it, most people didn't know it.
I mentioned the David Shaw one, and if anybody hasn't watched or listened, make sure to listen to it, because it's phenomenal. Is there any other pleasant surprise that came out of this one?
His audio wasn't great, and it kills me, but Tom House, I thought, was really good with that moment in the 2018 season when Luck is back and he starts to play well. And Andrew's wife, Nicole, comes up to Tom House on the sideline. And Tom House is the guy that saw him at his lowest point. No confidence, couldn't throw a ball 10 yards. And when he comes back, Nicole says, "Thank you for giving me my Andrew back." And that's just a peek into how bad this was, not just physically, but Andrew, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it was a dark place. Like, it was a depressive type place when he couldn't play football for the team that, moved on from Peyton Manning for him. And he was supposed to be the face of the franchise. And he was terrific. And then when he couldn't do it, I think there was this darkness that came over him. And he admitted to me several times how hard it was. So to see those behind the scenes moments from Tom House, from David Shaw, from Jacoby on his way back, that was really revealing to me.
No, Familia, if you haven't checked it out, go to the Athletic Football Show, the podcast. It's wherever you get your podcasts. It's going to be like a Netflix series, Familia. You're going to keep wanting to go. You're going to want to jump into the next one right after the previous one. So, again, thank you for doing this, and for giving us such a great story. I mean, it is just great investigative journalism and great voiceover work, by the way. So big ups on that. Big ups. It's all that Wish TV work that you've been doing, so it's paying off. You know what? So let's get into the present day. New quarterback. I think I think
what
this
else
is the
new.
Yeah, exactly. Matty Ice, Mateo Hielo. There's been talk. I think you mentioned Reggie Wayne. Made some comparisons to kind of like demeanor and to Peyton Manning, which should not be taken lightly by anybody who follows the Colts.
Not here.
How does the scheme and change, and kind of how does he shape up, as a quarterback, possibly for fantasy?
He's perfect for the Colts. He's exactly what they need. And think back, they moved on from Carson Wentz without a plan B. There was no guy in waiting. It was not Matty Ice or Carson Wentz. It was Carson Wentz or the alternative, and they chose the alternative. And Matty Ice has just been this veteran guy that they needed. Now, they've compared him to Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck in leadership style. He's not the same player that those guys were. Let's be clear about that. But, yesterday during practice, there was a moment when a rookie tight end ran the wrong route. And Matty Ice went right over to the position coach and told him exactly what he did wrong. And that little stuff, like he's stopping guys in the hallway to ask him, what would you do on this route if we saw this defense? Like that little stuff adds up. So really, he's been a kick in the ass, if I'm allowed to say it, to this team. They needed that at the quarterback position with all the question marks last year about Carson Wentz. And there was a lack of leadership there. There was. And that's one of the reasons this team moved on. Matt Ryan has been exactly what they needed on this front. It's hard to pinpoint fantasy what he's going to do because he's got a lot of weapons around him. Mm-hmm. And they're going to lean on the ground game more than most teams with Jonathan Taylor, 1,811 yards last year. Michael Pittman's a monster and has looked really good in training camp. Parris Campbell, I know what everyone's saying. He always gets hurt, but this dude can play, and we've seen it at camp. But the other guy that I think is a really interesting fantasy look is Nyheim Hines, the backup running back. They use him in this pony package where they use him with Taylor. They can use him at receiver, on the outside, on the inside. He's just a good football player. And so they've got a lot of weapons, but I think Matty Ice, 25, 27, 30 touchdowns, maybe 8 or 9 interceptions. But it's going to be less splash and more substance from this offense this year. He's going to make the checkdowns. He's going to make the smarter throws, and it's going to be a much more efficient version of the offense than last year, where there were some spectacular plays and there were some left-handed interceptions from the end zone.
Yeah, that was some tough ones. I did ride a little bit of that hot streak where Carson Wentz had 2 touchdowns for several games, but yeah, it was the end was not pretty. So no bonito. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor, number one running back. He's going almost every draft. He's going number 1 overall. You mentioned 1,811 yards. I mean, seriously, what can he possibly do for an encore? I mean, just more of the same.
Yeah, I think you're going to get numb to how great he is. He's been completely the same this year in camp. He's looked terrific. There was a moment a week ago, and we asked Matt Ryan, what do you know about Jonathan Taylor? And he's like, well, I played the Bills late last season, so I watched the Colts-Bills game. JT had 5 touchdowns, and Matt Ryan was obviously very impressed. But then he said a week ago at camp on the first play, JT makes this cut up field, and Matt Ryan says, it's just different when you're in person. It's just different. So 1,811 yards, if he gets there again, that's amazing, because the Colts were so run dependent late last year. They had to go to him. Ideally, the Colts are more versatile this year. But this dude's not slowing down. He's not slowing down. And the line, I think, will play better this year because Quentin Nelson will be fully healthy. And that's a scary thought. So JT is a home run waiting to happen.
And you already gave us the update on Nyheim Hines. I mean, is he? I mean, he's going to be a big part of that, much bigger part of this passing game, right?
Yeah, he is. He really is. He's caught 80 balls in a season twice, and it was with Andrew Luck at quarterback and Phillip Rivers at quarterback. Only 40 catches last year with Carson Wentz, and that was a big problem. That was a big problem for the offense. It was too centric on Taylor, and they want to get the ball to Nyheim in space because he's such a mismatch guy. So he's going to be much more involved this year. I can already tell.
And you know what? I remember last year we talked. You had talked about Michael Pittman taking the next step, and he did. So, and you also talked about you were wishing for health for Parris Campbell, and unfortunately that didn't happen. What I think we're good on Campbell, but is there another gear for Pittman, and any hope for Alec Pierce?
Oh yeah, Pierce is good. Interesting thing the Colts have done. They've had Stephon Gilmore, the veteran corner, cover him a lot in camp this year, and it's tough to get a ball on Gilmore. Like Pierce has not caught a lot on him. Now Pierce has made some plays on other guys for sure. You can see the basketball, volleyball background in him. He's a jump ball guy. He's got great movement and great athletic skills. It's just easy for him to move. Not a lot of guys it's that easy. I like Pierce as the number 2 outside receiver. I really do. Pittman's on one side, Pierce is on the other. I like Campbell in the middle. Campbell can make plays, and one thing that's important is Matt Ryan is really efficient in the middle of the field. He's really good over the middle. Frank Reich's really good over the middle too with these crossing routes he designs. And Parris Campbell can do a lot of damage there. We can see it. There's no question of whether he can play. It's whether he can stay healthy. And I hope he does because he's a good kid and he's just had some bad breaks.
Yeah, it's just, he's one of those guys that you're just kind of like, oh, but you don't want to put the injury prone label on him. You just wish for health on him. Just go for it. I grabbed him in a couple of leagues, so just kind of speculative, kind of hoping to get the injury by. Michael Pittman have another gear in him this year?
He's a 1. I think that's what he's out to prove, that he's a solidified number 1. He's a stud. He plays angry. And I think Reggie Wayne is going to help him a lot. Reggie Wayne, the all-time leader in Colts games played, is back as the receivers coach. It's fun to watch him coach. And Pittman wants that target. He wants to be up there with, Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and all these young studs at the position. I mean, you look at Cincinnati and what they did and Jamar Chase. And so Pittman wants to be in that conversation. I guarantee it. And with Matt Ryan being as efficient as he is, he's going to have a really good chance this year.
No, love it. I've grabbed him too. I know one guy you were high on last year also was Alie-Cox. Now there seems to be less competition in the tight end room. Could we possibly see a little uptick in targets going his way?
They're going to have to, right? I mean, he's the number 1 guy now without Jack Doyle, and Doyle's absence is going to be noticeable. He's a great blocker, and he was their safety valve on 3rd and 7. And Mo's going to have to do more than just 2 big games in a row. He's done that before, but he hasn't sustained it over 7 or 8 games. And so there's a lot more on his plate this year from blocking and from being the number 1. And behind him, there's a lot of question marks, a lot. Haven't seen a lot from Kylan Granson. Jelani Woods, the rookie tight end, hasn't been off to a great start. Alec Ogletree, Andrew Ogletree, maybe, but, I just don't love this tight end group after Alie-Cox. That's going to put more pressure on him. And he's going to have to deliver this year because they don't have anyone else.
No, well, yeah. You also teased it a little bit with the offensive line. I always love to ask the offensive line question. I know the left tackle is could be a new one, but is this group looking as formidable as ever?
Wait and see. Let's see. I hesitate to say anything definitive on the line because they've only been in pads for 1 day. And secondly, you don't get a real feel until the preseason and even the regular season. They're just not playing real football yet. And Matt Pryor is the left tackle at this moment, and they drafted a kid out of Central Michigan, Bernard Raymond, to maybe come in. Now that's a good competition, and they're facing Yannick Ngakoue every day, which is great to see. A great pass rusher. It'll make them better. But I'm going to reserve my judgment on that because I just don't know until the games start to count. I do think Quentin Nelson will be better this year because he was playing through a lot last year injury-wise. Ryan Kelly should be better, and they have Braden Smith on the right tackle spot. So a very good line, but I'm not ready to say they're among the best in the league like they have been until they figure that left tackle spot out.
Yeah, and you're not kidding about games, and with so few starters now playing in the preseason, it almost feels like the first couple games of the regular season are almost like preseason games, almost like those early games in college where before you get into the conference. So
They go from 8 snaps to 70. I mean, that's a huge jump,
Yeah, no way to prepare for that unless you're actually playing in it. So, man. Last one. We got a new defensive coordinator. Matt Eberflus is gone. Now he's head coach with the Bears. Now it's a new team. It's a new scheme, but some players are carrying over. Some injuries have happened. I'm asking this question from how does this team shape up versus the run and versus the pass, so I could kind of like get an idea how I want to recommend players going against this defense.
Good question. The Colts have been very, very good against the run under Eberflus, right? That was one of their staples. Top 5 a couple times. Now, I wonder if that changes under Gus Bradley because they're going to have a different rush plan. And Ngakoue is exactly what they needed. Let's be honest. They needed an elite edge rusher. He's going to make Buckner better. He's going to make Grover Stewart better. But in the secondary, that's going to be key because Kenny Moore is going to be the nickel. They're really young at safety. They might start a rookie in Nick Cross, who's a 3rd-round pick. Julian Blackmon's back from his Achilles tear, and he's back way earlier than he should be. He's just an unbelievable healer. But the key for me is 53. Shaquille Leonard is what he goes by now, formerly Darius Leonard. He's a takeaway machine. He saved them a lot of times last year. This defense was okay last year, but they snuck into the top 10 because 53 took the ball away 12 to 15 times. I mean, they didn't always recover the fumble, but he was just a turnover machine, and he was on this heater. And if he's healthy, now he hasn't practiced yet. He's coming off this back surgery that they think will alleviate pain in the ankle and calf. If he's healthy, I like this group. And Gilmore changes everything. Gilmore has looked really good. So with all cylinders firing, I really like this defense in the top 7, top 8 area. But without Darius, without Leonard, it's incomplete. So, but from a fantasy perspective, this is a defense that takes the football away a lot.
And I love that you pointed out how Stephon Gilmore is playing on Alec Pierce. He's growing up the kid. He's baptism by fire.
How is that not going to make him better?
Yeah, it's just fantastic. So he's a guy I'm going to keep an eye on later in drafts. Pierce, as I say. You know what? Last year when we talked, you gave me such a great Mexican food. Just kind of like some of your favorites. Any new greatest hits?
Man, good question. We get these empanadas at Livery downtown. It's there. I think it's probably not allowed to have them as a meal, but we do it sometimes, my wife and I, and we have no shame. They're just, I don't even care if it's chicken or chorizo or cheese or whatever, but they're perfect.
You know what? Empanadas anytime. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, they're good anytime. So you get my blessing.
I like this podcast.
Oh, mi amigo, you know what? Your coverage is great. I mean, I love what you had. I mean, any projects that you got coming up on training camp, or is it just training camp and you're going to give us the latest and greatest?
Yeah, watching camp every day, watching practice, and digging into some of the players, some of the new guys. I want to tell their stories and see who they are and see how they got here, because that's always one of the more fascinating parts of my job.
Oh man, Familia. Hey, you know what? I've been an Athletics subscriber for 4 years. Love it. It's some of the great coverage. You get great writers like Zak Keefer, and it's just mi amigo. I thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you doing this in between training camp. Thank you. Muchas gracias. And Familia, thank you for watching. Keep following. We got a couple more NFL insiders coming up, but also make sure you're going to fantasypoints.com. Get that 10% off when you put in the promo code Familia22. And also, go to FamiliaFFB.com, get original content. And also when you go to, thank you to Anchor and for making sure our podcast gets out to Apple, Google, Spotify, the audio side, or also make sure you're catching us on YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe, por favor. And one more time to our invitado. Muchas gracias, Zach. Hope you got a nice hat because it looks sunny out there. And
it does. We're going to see how they're doing.
Remember, everybody, todos somos familia. Salud.